Yes.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. So today we'll be discussing about the Block 2 and Unit 4 session. The topic is mitigation and control of impacts of development for ensuring sustainability in our future activities or our projects. So today we'll be discussing about introduction, objectives, what is development, what is industrialization, and what are its impacts. So impacts include water pollution. So we will be individually discussing the impacts like water pollution, global warming, forest and desertification, biodiversity, the loss of biodiversity and impacts on biodiversity, how it is reacting to the impacts of development, then the external cost of production, how they control the influence of development on the overall environment and the economic, then mining and its hazards and how we can control these hazards of development as well as mining projects and other activities through participatory development, and then further references and suggested further readings. So I'll be discussing throughout the presentation what are the practical implications of all these developments and what are the tools and strategies which can be adopted to control these impacts of development and to ensure sustainability in all the projects we are implementing throughout the whole range of activities which are there in our economy. So starting with introduction, this world development, it originated post-world in the post-World War society, and there were two broad connotations when the topic of development was taken over. So there was a general connotation and there was a technological connotation. So first is general sense of social development, where all kind of development activity, they are related with the society and how the social aspect of our environment is reacting to that kind of development was studied under the first connotation. So this is as per the classical evolutionist theory of 19th century, where some societies or ways of lives were actually considered superior to others. And then came the development in context of technology, how technology, how material conditions, they are changing the kind of development that is taking place. And it is from economist point of view, and it equates your development to per capita income and growth. So if a country is having higher per capita income and growth, uh, in spite of damage to the social component or the environment component, it was considered developed. And our Western countries, they fitted exactly into this definition in the 19th century. So as per the classical connotation of development, the space and time location is very significant. So development today, if we see, is largely an outcome of the colonial spread of Western ways of life and the privileging of Western technology, Western industrial development over all the modes of subsistence. So it took over the social component, it took over the environment component, but considering the economist point of view, considering the per capita income growth of these nations, they were considered developed. So largely, if we see, there is a Western way of life and there is a thinking of Western related cultural attributions. Then there is technology, industrial technology. So overall, all these three components, they make a perfect recipe for development. Okay, so if we study why we are studying this topic of development today, so what is the need of studying this topic? So we basically need to study it critically. Why we are justifying development in economist point of view and not just overall sense of development, be it related with environment management, be it related with development of society or in its overall context, and what are the impacts of technology which are there due to the development that is taking place haphazardly by Western science and then how these consequences of development are being faced globally at present, and what kind of development we envisage for a sustainable lifestyle, so can we can all move on to that kind of development which can ensure sustainability in our ecosystem. Okay, so basically, what is industrialization, what is westernization, what is development, how development is causing environment pollution, and how it is a threat to continuity of life on earth. So all these topics will be discussed today, and objectives are basically we need to describe the process and struggle to maintain various ways of life, how development can take place, and still we can ensure processes and strategies which can control the development in a manner to ensure that our environment is at least risk. Then how to recognize the cases of displacement and interface of traditional occupations, and explain the continuity of modes of subsistence. So these will be the broad topics for study in this unit. So conventionally, development is visualized as a top-down a process. So for example, in our country also, if you see earlier, before our present government came, there was not much emphasis on sanitation, hygiene. But when they came, they started a program of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, and all the cities and all the municipal corporations were given this blueprint how you have to go about and take care of your cities and take care of the latest technologies and adopt those technologies and implement those technologies to ensure that the environment in your city is clean and there is a the sanitation bar is higher. Okay, so there is a kind of competition in at present in between all the cities, who is going to rank higher in your Swachhta Sarvekshan Abhiyan, and Swachhta Sarvekshan ranking is given, what ranking is given to which MC. So that has become now an agenda of all political parties as well as the ruling government in every state. Okay, so those such kind of development comes under top down process. Okay, so whereby a power center forced its agenda into the politically subordinated subject. So there is a bid to transform the overall system, and a blueprint is prepared by the central government, which then trickles down to all the state level bodies, and those state level bodies at their local level they implement it. And if you search for the example I have given you, you will notice there are many kind of competitions. We also have participated through my company. We participated in one of the challenges which were thrown by our local municipal bodies to ensure that we implement and adopt some technologies for waste management. So these are some of the practical examples I am quoting to make you understand in a better manner. So what is development? So as West has been in power for quite some times, and you have seen how colonial periods have advanced and power was exerted from the top before democracy came in, and before the people like people living in independent India, they started building roads. So and creating infrastructure. So when we started creating these roads and infrastructure in major parts of our country, it was thought that, for example, in Himalayan forests or the tribal areas, these people never have any access to the outside world. But when we had constructed these roads and constructed infrastructure in these areas for example, promoting ecotourism, so it made things easier for outside commercial interests to get inside in these remotest regions. So where very rarely, if ever, is any input given to the local economy, which is the fact at present. So that has to be taken care of. So another aspect I want to point out, as per the EIA notification 2006, EIA notification is basically Environment Impact Assessment Notification. So it lists down all the development project activities which are implemented largely in our country, be it metallurgy industry, be it pharmaceutical industry, be it construction industry, area development projects. It can also have common effluent treatment plant projects. And as an accredited consultant of National Accreditation Board for Education and Training, and I have been implementing these environment clearance projects. There is around 40 to 41 categories of industries if you count under the headings of EIA notification 2006. So as per government, there is a tool which categorizes development and classifies development in different kinds of industries, and they have laid down specific protocols to be taken up by these industries to ensure there is least impact of their activities on the environment. And when they ensure what is the impact of activities on the environment, they have to incorporate mitigation measures in their environment clearance applications. Those mitigation measures will be a guarantee for the future activities to be environment conscious. Okay, so that there is least impact on the environment whenever the project is operational. So there are basically design stage, implementation stage, and operational stage. So for all these three stages, for every project, be it metallurgy project, be it mining, major mining project, or minor mineral mining project, construction project, building project, or maybe it is a common effluent treatment plant construction project, or thermal power project, wind power project. So all those activities have to take care of the mitigation measures for controlling the impacts of their development activities on the environment. So that is there already in EIA notification 2006, and I would request all of you to go through this EIA notification 2006 very thoroughly. And it is basically a practical extension of the subject you are studying. Okay. So if you are studying this environment and sustainability subject, and if you are aware of EIA notification 2006, you will get to know there is an accreditation program of Quality Council of India, and you can become a part of that accreditation process, and you can get yourself accredited as an environment consultant in whatever field you are, be it a botany, be it zoology. So there are different categories of subject areas which are practically utilized under the EIA notification 2006 for assessment of these development projects. Okay. So as for considering drawbacks of capitalist system, when this colonial system came up, the tribal areas which were the richest in natural and mineral resources, their land become the poorest. Why? Because the resources which were developed and extracted from their area, they were not the immediate beneficiaries of those resources and those developmental activities. So for example, dams were built to provide electricity or irrigation for agriculture, but the indigenous population which have been hunting and gathering food on those project sites, they are not given enough compensations, even in spite of having land acquisition, rehabilitation, and resettlement act. LARR Act is there for ensuring that social impacts of any project, any large project which involves displacement and rehabilitation of people inhabiting that local area, that is considered under LARR. So all these in practical examples I am giving you, that will help you to ensure that whatever knowledge you are gaining through this subject, you should be able to utilize that knowledge in actual project implementations whenever you work as an environment professional, or even if you are working in your area and you want to utilize your knowledge for that subject area to ensure sustainability for the environment. So again, there are drawbacks of capitalist system of development. For example, the entire system works on recognition of those kinds of rights that were approved by the Western mode of ownership. So now these type of institutions are being rapidly replaced by market networks, a cash economy, so that there is a superior technology which is utilized in these systems. Okay. So basically, industrialization has many fallouts, and just to name a few, because it's a long list, and you can name a few, in like environment pollution, mining hazards, global warming, loss of forest cover, desertification, externalities, biodiversity loss. So we will be all discussing it. What is externalities? Because most of you must be new to this kind of term. So what kind of environment pollution is being caused by development activities in general? Which major reasons for transition to industrialization, why we took industrialization in such a massive manner. So there was a new form of energy in the form of fossil fuels, and with the use of coal and its conversion into steam, we could make transportation and access to remote locations much easier. So that was a thirst given for industrialization through fossil fuels, and then transition from use of organic sources of energy took over to mechanical sources of energy or machines. That again gave another thirst. So all those manual operations which were limited by the time and space component, they were enhanced by use of energy to for and mechanical technology which was utilized to ensure there is more number of production, there is more number of per hour production. And thus when the production increases, they ensure that marketing is there and the products are utilized as by consumer in a more bigger manner. So a person who is not utilizing the person who was utilizing 10 objects or 10 articles from the market, now he or she is utilizing around 100 e-products. Okay, so even in skincare, you see the same brand is launching around 20-25 products. So earlier there used to be one brand for one product, and you used to buy it or not buy it. That was also your personal choice, because you were not influenced by those marketing strategies and marketing tactics which were there. But nowadays we are directly or indirectly, consciously or unconsciously, we are moving towards consumerism because of this industrialization. So then machines are operated through burning of fossil fuels, which also helps in more of industrialization. And then after Second World War, coal provided the bulk of requirements of electricity production. And at the peak of colonial period, the hazards of industrialization started in Western countries. So because these hazards were noticed appreciably in the earlier period of colonization in Western countries, they also started adopting technologies for the control of these hazards. Okay, so because these hazards are now noticeable in our developing countries like India, you see smog incidents or episodes in Delhi during winter period. So those kind of incidents are now being noticed and in developing countries, and now developing countries are just in crisis to get technologies from West so that they can also control the hazards of industrialization in their countries. And most of the time, unfortunately, it happens we grab those kind of technologies which are not so relevant in present time in Western countries, because they are cheaper and because they are easily available to developing countries from developed countries. So that is why there are many at times we are implementing STP for example, in Ganga Action Plan. We'll be studying more about that in this unit. So there many technologies have been implemented for STPs in Ganga Action Plan also, but they have seen failure because of the lack of technical and operational skills which are required in developing countries, but which were available in developed countries, so they could operate it well as per their availability of resources. But here they are not that much applicable. So in those cases, we see that these early impacts of industrialization are more easily traceable and more easily manageable through our indigenous techniques. Okay, So again, this in the beginning of 20th century, there was coal-induced smog in London, and there was a phenomenon of acid rains, which was caused by dissolution of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide. So because of excessive burning of fossil fuels with the advent of industrialization, our rainwater catches these gases through atmosphere and it falls out on the surface of earth as acid rain. So it is again a consequence of too much industrialization, and linkage between acid rains and rising levels of sulfur and nitrogen compounds has been established through many research projects. If you search on internet, there are many research papers and in many renowned journals of elsewhere. And for example, in Center for Science and Environment, they also published a paper in 2004 where they have noted that IMD scientists say pH values in rainwater have been dropping in India. What does pH level dropping indicates? That pH level is going more and more acidic. So your neutral pH is 7. So if anything goes above that, that is alkaline, and anything below 7 is acidic. So the normal pH is around 5 or 5.5, which is dropping every year. Okay, so extent and impacts of acid rain due to industrialization is also cannot be ignored. The data is extensive, and you have it can because earlier when the impacts of acid rain were quoted by some of the scientists, many researchers, many other technologists, and people who have been propagating industrialization, they had objected to those kind of research results. But now the data is so much extensive and it is irrefutable, and the scientists cite the example of Northeast India, where the oil refineries on the first fertilizer factories were there, and thermal plant and oil gas installations were there in major numbers, and they have caused acid rains in those states. So acid rain spreads everywhere once they form ice in glaciers and run into rivers and sea, and they have harmful effects on all kinds of life. Considering all kinds of life, they have an abnormal pH scale for their survival and sustenance. So again, you must have heard about the Taj Mahal, and it's turning yellowish as its marble is getting polluted by acid rain. And there was a major cleaning and cleaning operation which was carried out for Taj Mahal in Mathura. So industrialization and its fallout also includes your burning of coal, the emissions of coal dust and smoke in the air. And these days, due to the implementation and due to the control of pollution control boards in all the states, there are portals on the website of pollution control boards where you can even launch complaints if you are noting any kind of smoke from any specific industry's chimney. Okay, so all those practical strategies are there for people. For example, public interest litigation tool is there. If you actually want to stand as an ambassador of environment protection, you can also go for public interest litigation. And many at times I have seen practically pollution control boards are now controlling these episodes of smoke and dust in their local regions as well. So because if you see Central Pollution Control Board website also, they issue show cause notice to all the industries who are having any kind of fallouts due to their industrial activities. So if any industry is receiving show cause notice, it is a direct call for showing the reason why they are not abiding by the environmental norms, and why their air emissions or wastewater standards are not abided as per the national standards. So that tool is also there. And then if we see around the famous work of Arturo Escobar, one of the well-known voices to critique development he has talked about new process of capitalism called ecological phase. So this ecological phase considers environment should not be treated something like a backdrop for action. It should be the prime responsibility whenever you are implementing any project activities. So those kind of researches and those kind of works of uh, prominent environmentalists and environment professionals are now guiding the industries as well as the policy makers to adopt better strategies for control of fallouts of industrialization. Coming to impacts of industrialization and water pollution. So it's a known fact that all major rivers in India are now polluted to such an extent that they have also ceased flowing smoothly. So all these rivers are contaminated with heavy metals like mercury and poison. They are poisoning the fish, which is also when we consume this kind of fish product or aquatic products like prawns or shrimps or crabs or fish. So all those kind of products, when are consumed by human population, they also cause bioaccumulation of heavy metals. So it is not just for the environment, but for the our own self existence and survival also. We need to control this. No, because the level of pollution in any water source is the direct impact of development. Like, for example, a river depends on the concentration of pollutants and discharges which are released into that river. Okay, so thus this concentration of population on river banks and industries on the river banks have led to higher urbanization and presence of polluting factories like tanneries of Kanpur, and discharge of toxic waste into Ganga river also adds to pollution. These are some of the examples. And if you can just recall, there was a trapezium zone which was identified around Taj Mahal after there was notice that Taj Mahal is causing yellowish scaling over its surface. So all over the Taj Mahal there was a 2.5 kilometer area where a trapezium shape was identified as per the study done by Neary. And for considering the direction of wind and the kind of pollution that is being emitted in that area, that trapezium zone was banned from any kind of industrial activities in future. This was just to ensure that whatever is emitted in that trapezium zone is not increasing from the level it is already there. Okay, and whatever industries are existing, they must abide by all the environmental and air emission norms, so that there is no more scaling of Taj Mahal, so that there is no more acid rain formation in that trapezium zone, at least where Taj Mahal is located. So I have actually come across practical case studies where a hospital came. I will not name any of my clients, but one of our hospital wanted extension of their operations, and that was located in that trapezium zone. So I specifically designed a report where we had noted down all the aspects where the hospital cannot emit any kind of air pollution, and wherever it is emitting, for example, power backup is utilized for operation of hospital. So that DG set, we took all the data on how many days that DG set was run and how much pollution it was caused, and whether it is abiding by the norms of pollution control, local pollution control board of Uttar Pradesh. So all those things were reconciled, and then that report was submitted to Ministry of Environment and Forest to reconsider that hospital should be allowed to expand because of the immediate benefit it would give to the population of that area in terms of advanced medical facilities, and there will be no pollution to the environment, considering all these technologies and strategies which were adopted by the hospital management. But till date they haven't considered. So though there are strict rules, policies and guidelines which are at present being implemented in our country, at many times there are many follows because there is a lack of manpower with local pollution control boards, and they may fall out in notice of the industrial activities in some areas of their jurisdiction. But still we are having a long way to go, and we have already started on the right foot to ensure that our future is sustainable and environment is safe for our future generations. Then coming to impacts of technological interference and water pollution, there are technological interferences like damming and diversion of water. And it is one of the activities which many at times comes in news, and many projects have been stopped wherever there have been major implications to the biological diversity as well as the social indigenous people and tribes who were located in those dam areas, and there wherever those diversion of waters were required from rivers and canals. And Narmada project in our Medha Patkar, some of the environment revolutionists have already played a major role in ensuring that projects which are not environment friendly or which are having major fallouts of their project activities, they should not be implemented in consensus with the environment sustainability. Again, the Ganga, for example, is especially vulnerable because of its water that has been diverted to irrigation canals at Haridwar, rejoining the river only at Kanpur. So when the flow of river is disrupted, its potential to accumulate waste increases. So that is a natural phenomenon. And earlier rivers were having natural flow, undisrupted flow. So they had this rejuvenating capacity. There were no STPs or ETPs on the banks of these rivers, but still their water was clear, their water quality was ensured because of their natural rejuvenation capacity was more than the pollution that was being generated. So the carrying capacity was not compromised of these natural resources, and they were able to control the amount of pollution that was being exposed to them. But now, due to because we have gone over and above the carrying capacity, these implications are very much visible. Again, there is a study by Kelly and Ellie. Kelly, Ellie, we have already discussed this during our discussion and my presentation on how socio-cultural beliefs can be utilized for environment sustainability. So again, this study is coming in picture, considering the Central Pollution Control Board, how Central Pollution Control Board listed 191 grossly polluting industries. So what I was telling you about the show cause notices that are issued to industries, that was under this perspective only. So in 1995 also in CPCB, there were 191 countries who were polluting industries in the state of Uttar Pradesh, 6 in Bihar, and 67 in West Bengal. So they were issued show cause notice to ensure that their wastewater is not polluting Ganga river, and they should ensure proper pollution control and mitigation measures over their wastewater streams. Again, at the same time, the report was made, and these industries were about the industries which were discharging toxic effluent, and that carried BOD concentrations of more than 100 milligrams per liter. So there are again clauses in provisions in our Air Act, Water Act, that any pollution control board, if he finds that any industry is emanating pollution over and pollutants over and above the national standards, they can directly visit that industry and collect samples of that waste from that industry. No industry can deny any pollution control board officer the entry to visit their industry and to take samples from their industry and determine how much pollution is being caused by that industry. So those kind of provisions, they are the major tools, and they give strength to our pollution control board and implementation agencies manpower. Again, at the same time, when the report was made, these industries were discharging toxic pollutants. So each industry was each unit's discharge was added up to and it came out to more than 1 million liters of waste per day. Okay, so that was a cumulative impact of industry. So whenever we go for environment clearance, we just note down the impact of our industry, our project, and we ensure that these mitigation measures will be incorporated, and we will control the pollution generated by our industry. But what about the cumulative aspect of that waste? So if cumulatively that waste is added up, it comes to more than what the waste our rivers can hold on to, and how they can rejuvenate they cannot rejuvenate themselves if that cumulative amount or quantity of waste is discharged into these rivers. So researchers have now found that heavy metals such as cadmium, zinc, nickel, lead, chromium, and copper, they are concentrated in the river water. And in 1995, they were reported high levels of zinc and nickel in the sediment of the river Yamuna, and a river that flows again to the capital city of Delhi and into the Ganga at Allahabad. So JNU researchers have also reports that pollution control board, the PCB concentrations were as high as 782 ppm, and they have even detected presence of pesticides like DDT, hexachlorohydrocarbons, and cyclode in the wastewater of Yamuna River. So our rivers are now more of a drain rather than being a natural flow of flow of water, or natural flow of water resources, fresh water resources basically. So what are the reasons which is causing? Because we have extensive data, we have irrefutable proofs that the pollution is being caused to these rivers. So what is the reason why there has not been a success of Ganga action plan for control of water pollution? Now, there were availability of funds in the last 28 years. Around 20 million funds have been allocated for Ganga Action Plan. And again, Ganga Action Plan, if you find all that, there is a lot of literature on Ganga Action Plan. There are a lot many reports published by Central Pollution Control Board and the State Pollution Control Board and various other research agencies. So they have already published a lot of data. So why there has been a lack of success, why these pursued goals of reduction of pollution are not achieved, and the need is to establish sewage treating systems in 25 class 1 cities bordering the river across its stretch. Okay, so that was the main requirement. And then after even implementing and constructing STPs, the pollution could not be controlled due to lack of our maintenance. Okay, so the maintenance and operational capability of these STPs was again then compromised, which again led to the fallout in the achievement of the standards which were basically designed for these STPs. So there was, whenever an STP is designed, there is a defined designed capability to which it has to achieve a reduction in the polluting components, be it COD, be it BOD, be it heavy metals. So a designed reduction is always there. But when your efficiency reduces and due to maintenance and operation crisis or issues, so that kind of designed efficiency is not achieved in long run. So that is the main issue. And then there a lot amount of huge funds were generated and earmarked for this project. And the first thing which was undertaken was beautification of the Manikarna Ghat of Banaras. So there are the funds are designed and allocated by scientific bodies, by the researchers who design the overall project. But when it comes to implementation, it is mostly the political bodies which are involved in implementation. And they try to see what kind of activities will involve masses, what kind of activities. Now if I'm reducing pollution load and COD BOD, larger masses will not be interested. They won't even understand what is COD BOD. But now, as we are creating this force, this whole league of environment professionals through this sustainability development projects, and you people are working in various fields and various departments. So whenever a project comes which is for the benefit of environment, you have to study it deeply, and you have to ensure that the funds are utilized in a proper manner and for the activities which can directly impact the quality of river, rather than getting more number of votes for the political parties that are implementing those projects. So cultural and ritual significance is important, but if it is compromising the funds which need to be utilized for ensuring better water quality of the river, that should not be there. Okay. So there was little done towards actual cleaning of river and pollution control, and most of the funds were diverted and they were utilized for the activities which were not on the priority for controlling of pollution in these rivers. So this is one of the news excerpt which I have taken down from internet, and there are many reports, innumerable a number of reports are there. So if you want to understand more about the Ganga Action Plan and how much funds were there, how activities were planned. So there were 8 ministries to work on these specific issues for 3 years and to carry forward 21 action points under Namami Gange program. So there was an objective to ensure comprehensive measurement to determine and maintain environment flow of Ganga around the river, then rehabilitation and upgradation of existing sewage treatment facilities, and taking up new projects of sewage infrastructure. So all these points were really identified, and they could have really led to complete success of the project. However, due to a non understanding, due to lack of understanding of our local bodies who are actually implementing these activities, or the people who are on the ground who are practically involved in these implementation projects, they were not aware how it will help in overall success of Ganga Action Plan. So they could divert those funds for other activities which they thought are of more priority and which will be more visible to the masses. So that should not be the criteria. As an environment professional and as a researcher or scientist who has thorough knowledge of sustainable development and environment, you should ensure that these always the project activities, the allocated funds should be utilized for the activities they have been designed for. Then water pollution, if we study it, it is a major cause of marine pollution. So again, it started with the British petroleum oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico in the beginning of April 2010. And it was a disaster for marine life in that area. And the general quality of life based on the seas, that includes tourism, was deteriorated due to this episode. And the oceans, which connect the entire globe, and major pollution such as the billions of tons of oil which are flowing into the ocean. So that is again a reason for the marine pollution, and pollution from one border can transfer to the other border. So it is again a cause of transboundary water pollution. Okay, so again the coral reefs are damaged and they are also becoming extinct. So it is estimated that over 90% of the world's biodiversity is found in the oceans. So if there is a major threat to ocean, you can understand how it can impact the 90% of biodiversity which is thriving in our oceans. Yet certain technological developments such as deep sea trawlers and sonar to spot and exploit fish in the seas, this is again causing depletion of edible species at a faster rate, because these technologies help you to identify and get into the breeding nest of these species of fish which are edible. And there is a massive exploitation of these fish species. So they are not being able to revive themselves at a rate at which they are being exploited. So that is again a major cause of depletion of these species. And then the tuna is almost fished to extinction. So are the turtles and whales. So again, these issues have to be taken care of whenever we are uh, uh, determining any kind of project activity which involves marine environment. Then another fallout is global warming. As you are all aware that it was found that ozone layer covering the Earth's atmosphere is being depleted, and a large ozone hole, actually a hole, was being discovered at the Arctic. So if you see, there are images in my last presentation also, I have included images of ozone hole and how it was shown through satellite imageries. So I've not repeated those slides again in this presentation. You can check on my last presentation. And then in 1995, the Nobel Prize was awarded to Frank Roland and Mario Molina for putting forward the ozone hypothesis that stated that chlorofluorocarbons, commonly which are used in refrigerations and halogen lamps, they are responsible for causing this kind of damage. And when it was identified, there was a major ban of utilization of CFCs for the household items. So that is already there and that has already been banned. And now we are using alternatives of CFCs in our household items. So when we identify and determine what is the reason for any environmental hazard, we also have technology, which can be an alternative to that hazard causing reason. Okay. So again, James Lovelock, famous environmentalist, he put forward the Gaia or Mother Earth hypothesis on a cruise to South Atlantic. And he found that all the CFC that has been produced since 1930, all these years, whatever CFC you have produced in and released in the atmosphere, it is still there. It is not eliminated at all. So that was again a major revelation that led to ban of CFCs from major industrial activities and products which were utilized at household levels. So again, depletion of ozone, you must be aware that it increases the UVA and UVB presence in the sunlight and it leads to global warming. So there are many IPCC intergovernmental panel for climate change, which has discredited as being too pessimistic. Yet the overall effects of climate change are felt globally in terms of freak weather conditions. So when IPCC report was initially launched, it was criticized to an utmost level because all the projects and our development activities would be threatened by such kind of impacts which were identified by IPCC. But in coming years and at present, you can see all those impacts are actually manifesting in front of our eyes. Okay, so in our day-to-day life also, we can definitely identify all these issues of global warming and incubation of all the deadly viruses like COVID virus is also there. So all those impacts were already identified in IPCC report, how there will be sudden climatic changes, how an area which is desertified will be having flooding incidents, and how areas which had flooding earlier will be desertified and will be having droughts. So those impacts were identified long back by IPCC. And the ranges for estimation of mitigation cost of climate change impacts ranges from 1.5 to 20% of GDP for doubling of CO2 concentration. So this carbon dioxide concentration, if it doubles, we have to dedicate 1.5 to 20% of our gross domestic product for every doubling of CO2 concentration. So there is a real social cost of carbon that will rise from 2 to 4% per year. And there have been studies which explain the uncertainties in climate sensitivity, discount rates, valuation of impacts. Again, there are many large examples of climate change impacts, like 1.1 to 3.2 people will be experiencing increased water scarcity by 2080. And crop revenues could fall by 90% by 2100 in Africa. So all these impacts are now visibly identified, and they are being practically observed and monitored by many agencies all over the world. And the mitigation measures which were suggested by IPCC, they are also being, like, we now have a state climate change action plan in every state. So if you go and search on internet, there is a state climate change action plan for every state government, and every state has to implement activities. They have allocated funds for taking up activities at local level, regional level, and their state level for ensuring mitigation of impacts of climate change. And there are many departments. There is animal and husbandry department, there is irrigation department, there is groundwater department, there is Punjab electricity boards are there, and then your urban development boards are there, municipal corporations are there, even researchers and institutions are there. So all these stakeholders of any state level body are involved in implementation of state level action, climate change action plan. Okay. So and more you can find on again internet. We have PDF reports and PDF files of all these projects. So then we have another major fallout, that is forest and desertification, which is most of the carbon dioxide which is produced by burning fossil fuels is absorbed by forests, and these forests acted as a carbon dioxide sink. So it's a very general term. Sink is all is there in every house, and whatever waste which is generated in our kitchen is washed down through that sink. So that is the terminology which is being used for our forest, so that we can understand a deeper relevance of their existence in our life, how they are acting as sinks for carbon dioxide in our environment. But still we have not been appreciating their existence, and we have been implementing many activities for deforestation, and the total green cover of our country is falling day by day. So but over centuries we have seen that humans have been depleting forests and putting them to alternative uses, and prime reason is that human habitations want to have a clear and settled cultivation. But when you have more of clear and settled cultivation, it really increases your external cost of on environment. And we will study more about what is external cost. So I'll explain you what is external cost in this context. So there are patterns like monocropping, single crop cultivation is there, which is for 1 or 2 seasons, and sometimes for years. In, for example, in Punjab there is paddy and wheat, and in some other areas of our country there is cotton. For example, in Maharashtra there is cotton. So there are many monocropping patterns which are existing in our in our agricultural economy. And use of artificial fertilizers is nowadays a major threat to our forests, and causing desertification on a long term. So these fertilizers, they release toxins and affect biomass, and whenever they are sprayed excessively, all that fertilizer is caught in the runoff through rains, or the water that is given to these crops for irrigation. So whatever excess is there, that just washes out and goes to rivers, and rivers join our marine life, and those toxins are again back to our food cycle, and again they cause bioaccumulation in human beings. So ultimately, whatever impact you are causing to the environment, it is going inside you, because every human being is made of 5 elements: air, water, soil, sky, and ether. So all and fire. So all those 5 elements, if they are polluted in through any kind of project activity, through any kind of implication you are causing to the environment, you are going to be the ultimate sink for that. Okay. So be it heavy metals, be it toxic pollutants, so they are now, our own survival is at risk. And once any project proponent understand this, that you are going to be the major stakeholder at risk in future, and your own generation will be suffering, then they can appreciate what kind of technologies and strategies they need to incorporate when they do some project activity. Because otherwise they just look into the profits, and they just look into how they can get away from any kind of environmental safeguard they have to utilize. Then when coming again to Rachel Carson works of Silent Spring, we can see again there was a major elaboration of harmful impacts of DDT, which was commonly used earlier in the past. In India also, it has been banned at many locations, but still you can find it in the market. And then these pesticides are still being used, and these are essential in permanent cultivation where the natural growth is stretched to its maximum limits by use of these artificial means. But now we are again going back to organic means of cultivation and organic agriculture, which is a major success in sustainability. Then there are more impacts of pesticides in forest. If you see, for commercial exploitation of forest, logging of timber, extraction of resins, and finally clearing of forest to make roads, railways, urban settlements. So any kind of infrastructure facility, you just name it, it will cause direct or indirect impact to our forest cover, and in the long term it will result in desertification. Okay. So again, shifting cultivation. Earlier, shifting cultivation was considered as detrimental to forests. But now they have utilized that by shifting cultivation, they could give a time span to the natural environment of that area to rejuvenate itself to its original capacity, to its original biodiversity. But so in a long run, shifting cultivation is now being considered a good and sustainable practice rather than a threat to the environment. Okay, so some studies have really helped us to understand deeper impacts of the practices which we have been denying it, which we have been considering unsustainable. Again, for example, when plastic was introduced, it was found that okay, life cycle of plastic is introducing lesser of cost and more of benefits due to its durability, due to its low cost, due to its utilization of waste soil, and due to utilization in many industrial products. So again, but now with the introduction of so much of plastic in our environment, and around 3.5 million of plastic is being generated. So you can see policies like single-use plastic ban are being introduced. So many at times we do not recognize environmental impacts of any product or activity when we introduce it just for the larger interest of implementation. Okay, but when we see that in the long run, what will be the impacts and how those impacts will become challenges for our environment, then we can basically design how that product should be introduced in a restricted manner, in a manner in which it can be managed in a longer run sustainably. Okay. So for example, again, technological innovations in forest management have been there, like electric saws, wheeled vehicles, and guns. So all this is helping exploitation at a rapid rate, okay, and which is again a threat to our forest cover. So again, if you see human interference with forest ecology, it is basically through four major methods: by manipulating or creating pulses of energy, by increasing net production, by increasing the gross production, manipulating the structure of food organization so that a greater proportion of its biomass is edible rather than just being produced for biodiversity. Okay, so there is more emphasis on producing biomass which is eatable or which can be consumed by the human population. So when we cultivate more of these eatable options, we are basically manipulating ecological succession to the advantage of humans. But it is but disadvantage to the environment. Okay, and any disadvantage to the environment in the long term will be disadvantage to human beings as well. So it is to nature's advantage that when ecological system increases gross production, so it is, while for humans it is advantages, but it for the net production and for the selective species, we all always try to cultivate some selective species at a restricted piece of land. But naturally there has been a thirst by through natural processes, the environment supports maximum number of species in any plot of land or any area of land. So in the natural process, after colonization of barren habitat, the initial stage is marked by the presence of opportunistic populations. So these kind of changes in the environment at a larger scale, when we are utilizing a large mass of land for cultivating a monocrop or cultivating only restricted species of plants and animals which can be utilized for human consumption, that is also causing loss of diversity. Okay, and also lack of natural equilibrium in forest. So coming to biodiversity now, as human beings are colonizing more resources of the earth, and therefore they are taking over the ecological niche of other species. So again, there are many challenges which are being imposed by these natural species, like our wild population comes to our farms and areas, and they kill their children they kill children of villagers, like in tiger the areas where tiger population is high. So what are the reasons? Because humans have been colonizing all the resources of the earth. We have been colonizing the areas which were actually ecological niche of these tigers. So those kind of incidents where there is a threat to human population by wild species of animals is due to this reason only. Okay, so by the use of their technology, such as cultivation, such as mechanization, such as electric saws, such as threshers and tractors, so all there has human beings are able to transfer energy from food chains to themselves, and therefore they are depriving other species of these resources, of these natural forest resources. So thus by technological modification of Earth's surface, we are taking over the earlier unoccupied regions of the Earth. And that is pushing all the natural species from their habitat and diminishing their number and posing them challenges to adapt themselves. So this is their way of adaptation when they come to our areas for getting more food, which is basically deprived in their own ecological niche. So in case of many species are in this case, many species are either extinct or they are facing extinction because of the destruction of rainforest, like orangutans, gorillas, tigers, and many species of birds and insects, they are being on the verge of extinction. So ultimately, such rapid species loss destabilizes our environment, and every kind of species plays its role in the environment. That is why it found that place, and that is why it found its ecological niche in our ecosystem. So every kind of ecosystem is being supported by many number of flora, fauna, and they form a part of whole sustainable system which can work on its own. And any species which gets extincted from that ecosystem, then it poses challenges for ecosystem to stabilize on its own. So if we see, there is a carrying capacity for every kind of ecosystem. It is the amount of organisms within that region and the environment which and the amount of the number which can be supported by the environment sustainability is called the carrying capacity. So it is basically a theoretical limit to which a population can grow, and we can either curtail its population, which for a humans means by cultural means, and secondly by technological innovations, step up its exploitation of energy from the environment. So this graph basically shows you how there has been a slow growth when the population is of any species is less, and when it reaches carrying capacity, again it goes into a slow growth mode. Why? Because now there is a stable equilibrium, but at present which we are having more population, more than the carrying capacity, which is, and which environment is not being able to support. So basically we are creating a burden on all ecosystems, be it our rivers, be it marine life, be it air, be it our soil ecosystem. So when a population reaches its carrying capacity, it is causing many reasons for exploitation of energy from the environment. So they are now by far the now after industrial revolution, why we are studying this carrying capacity in unit of development, because we want to know how development is impacting environment, because more of development, more of technological interface, we are utilizing more resources at a faster pace. So which is again, after industrial revolution, the human population has been growing at a much faster rate than ever before, with the help of technology, with the help of medical facilities, with the help of all kind of food products and refined uh, facilities, which we are getting a higher living standard, which we can experience these days. So all that is helping us to thrive in a better manner, and that's why we are going far beyond our natural carrying capacity, and thus a stable population that has a balanced relationship with the environment is called an ecological population. It is not happening for humans. So that stable ecological population is not there for human beings, and for rest of the species of biodiversity, there is there is a phenomenon of extinction. Okay, so that is the most unfortunate part of development. So again, there are external costs of production and development projects. So it is basically a negative effect to a third party from the production or consumption of a good. For example, radiation from nuclear plant. So when you see there is a nuclear plant set up, you ought to have a radiation impact on the environment, but that will be to people and masses who are not even aware of those radiation impacts. Okay, so it is basically an external cost. External cost is mostly intangible, and it cannot be most of the times calculated in an in economic terms with that much clarity for non-external cost or internal cost. So but not all aspects of human adaptation have to do with the subsistence or survival and reproduction. That is what adaptation is all about. So but the market, which is pushing people to consume more and more and create consumerist value to push up its sales, it is causing external costs to the environment by generating impacts to the third party. Okay, so the third party is our own human population, which is not involved in production or consumption of food. So the people who are not involved in production or consumption, they are, when they get impacted through any negative impacts of a product or production process, they are basically helping in external cost. So these are again more examples of production and consumption and how external cost and external benefits are there. For example, if there is a dumping of toxic waste that destroys habitats, that is an external cost. Overfishing, depleting fish stocks is again an external cost. The people who are not consuming fish, they will be having that impact of reduced diversity in marine and aquatic environment. So again, burning of coal adds to global warming, which is an external cost for all kinds of living organisms on this earth. So again, if you see consumption, excess alcohol intake at pub causes vandalism. So even people or even a population who is not consuming alcohol, they have to bear the repercussions of alcoholism if they are sitting in that pub for through the people who are actually consuming it. So it's again an external cost. So if we see external cost of food, so when we see we have low input cropping systems, we have agricultural practices like complex rotation, less tillage, less fertilizer input, less pesticide input. This is the case scenario where we are not going for unsustainable practices. We are on contrast going for sustainable practices, which where we might have to compromise on the production capacity. But again, we are introducing low input cropping system so that there is less of fertilizer, there is less of tillage, and there is less of pesticide input. Okay, so there are intermediate environmental changes. There will be less of soil erosion, there will be less of phosphorus loading to waters, less greenhouse emissions, less pesticide, and there will be off-farm consequences for the air quality, for the improved drinking water quality. When you are discharging less of pesticides to the freshwater streams on the outskirts of that plot of agricultural cropping pattern, so that will be again helping in improving the drinking water quality. It will not help cause any discharge of toxic pesticides into freshwater streams of that area, and lower incidence of flooding will be there due to less soil erosion. So these are again external costs of food. Okay. Again, there is cost only covers material inputs, but not things such as release of CO2, toxic waste, pollution cost to air and water, and so these are all called externalities, which are not tangible and really calculated. They cannot they can be calculated, but their calculation is so complex and it involves so much data from the ground, secondary data from the ground, primary data from the ground, that it becomes almost impossible task to calculate the values. That's why we take a component of externalities, and with the varying type of project, we ensure that there is some component allocated to externalities, so that we can account those externalities wherever we are going for environment economic calculation for a project activity. Then coming to mining and its hazard, mining is again one of the industries that causes most damage, be it minor minerals. There are 21 categories of minor minerals as per Environment Impact Assessment Notification and its further amendments which were introduced in the following years. So as per most mines, they are located in the marginal areas, so where they cannot there cannot be agricultural allocation for the land because of the unfavorable location. So in all those areas, mining is introduced, and major and minor minerals are extracted from those areas, which again leads to these kind of impacts like acid mine drainage, heavy metal contamination, sediment and erosion, processing chemicals, pollution. So all these impacts are results of mining operations. So this is one of the case study of Sukinda Valley project in Orissa, where Vedanta company, they started mining operations for sulfite. Okay. So there is whenever there is a mining operation, there are certain hazards to the environment. Like for example, the groundwater level goes down, and there is silted ponds are silted. There is lot of soil erosion is there. Even if there are deep minings, there are again causing threat to water levels in that area. So all the even the freshwater resources as well as the groundwater resources are compromised whenever mining operations are introduced in an area. So even the quality of water, even the heavy metals which were lower in concentration when the mining was not initiated, they get during the mining process, the heavy metals which were concentrated in certain depths of those mined areas, they are released into the environment, and they are released into the water resources of that area. That's why many mining operational sites, their large or long-term impacts include introduction of heavy metals in water streams. So this study is reported by Mahalakshmi Partha Sarthi And there was a chromite ore mined in India. About 95% of the chromite ore is mined from Odisha. And Sukinda Valley is the prime site. If you search on internet, there are many extensive research projects which have been done on this project location regarding the concentration of heavy metals, nickel and cobalt concentration, then also the involvement of women in mining sector in these areas, and how much impact is being caused to these human populations as well as to the environment and water pollution due to the mining operations in Sukinda Valley. Okay, so these are again some of the experts which I have taken from the research projects which are being implemented in Sukinda Valley project. And this imagery on the upper side shows the location of the project, while the lower imagery shows how the different kind of ores are concentrated, and how the different kinds of ores are calculated and identified at different project sites. Okay, and what are the vertical electrical sounding locations? So vertical VES sounding is basically a technology where you introduce current through two electrodes over the surface, and the resistivity between two electrodes below ground tells you what kind of strata is there below ground. So that VES sounding systems come handy whenever we are going for mining operations, or whenever we are going for groundwater extraction, so that we can know at what level what kind of resources are existing. So there are advanced softwares which can help you calculate resistivity in these layers at various current levels through the electrodes, and then you can determine what are the different stratas below earth. So those kind of research projects have been already implemented. You can get more idea about these projects through additional study. I have given all the references in the second last slide of this presentation. So what are the hazards? So basically hazards are there are sociological hazards, there are marginal cultivators, landless people who supplement their meager agricultural income by working in these mines. Okay, and by continuous working in these mines for over 5 to 10 years, their health is completely at risk. Their lung capacity, their breathing capacity comes down, and even their lifespan is compromised by working in these mines for longer periods. So, and they know many at times they receive no protective gear, and the health benefits which are ensured by these large scale mining companies. And women are also less paid for the same amount of work, which is against the human rights, which is against the agenda of United Nations for sustainability goals. And in all international projects, wherever we implement any ADB funded, JICA funded, World Bank funded, United Nations funded project, we always ensure these safeguards that all men and women should have same payment for the same amount of work. There should not be no disparity, and women should not be paid less for the same amount of work they are implementing. So apart from sociological implications, there are environment and pollution related implications. So the Regional Research Laboratory of Bhubaneswar, they have conducted a study on impact of chromite mining on the environment. And they have identified that water seeps from the mining locations, and it is highly polluting as this contains hexavalent chromium that is toxic. So hexavalent chromium otherwise is located in these mines at a very low, very deep depth. But when you are conducting mining operations, these contained and stabilized forms of components or compounds of chromium, they get exposed to the environment, and this is toxic. This causes irritant dermatitis, rhinitis, bronchospasm, and pneumonia. And again, when it enters food chain, and there were samples taken from the areas around these mining locations, so these samples also found chromium in plants, paddy, mango, meat, and fish. So ultimately every kind of pollution which is being generated in the environment is going inside our bodies. It is getting accumulated at the end of the food chain. Okay. Again, we have technological options like effluent treatment plant, which must be utilized and which must be designed to cater to reduction of major pollutants in that space stream from mining operation. But actually, practically, it doesn't happen. So again, considering the mining hazards, or Orissa Voluntary Health Association was found, and every fourth person in nearby villages was suffering from chromium poisoning related symptoms. So that was again studied through this health association. And more of the studies were done for remote sensing application center, and more impact of mining was studied at a larger scale. In last presentation also we studied how natural resources management can be done. Again, all mining sites are natural resource centers for minerals. So again, we have to study through remote sensing applications how mining of Sukinda Valley has led to the net increase in degraded forest in this area, which has risen from 732 hectares to 1,828 hectares. Okay, so technology definitely helps us to assess the impacts and then to control it if there is a will by the industry, if there is a will by a project proponent to actually control it. And as a stakeholder, you should have that awareness how technological innovations and how the power which is given to a layman or which is given to an environment professional like you can utilize those strategies and tools to ensure that there is no implication from any development activity on the environment. So coming to participatory development, now you have seen how we have discussed how major development activities are causing impacts on the environment. So all those environmental impacts of development activities can be controlled only through participated development, when everyone join hands, when people who are living there in that ecosystem, they get together with local bodies and with environment professionals and environmentalists in that area or NGOs working in that area, and they can work through their top-down approach to development and involve participation by the local people in both implementation and planning of the projects. So if local people are involved and local people are aware about the implications to the environment through that project activities, there is a tool of public hearing in all major projects, except for building and construction projects. There is an option of public hearing, but most of the time people are not even aware why they should go for public hearing, why they should attend a meeting of public hearing before a project is conceptualized in their project area. So if they are going for public hearing, they will be able to understand which kind of project is coming in that area, how they can push those project proponents to implement certain activities which will and secure their interest and secure the interest of environment in that area. Okay, so many times when we go for mining projects in public hearing, people demand that we should ensure rainwater harvesting is there for every household around the project site. So whatever lowering of water level is being caused by the mining operations or sand mining in that area, that will be compensated by the rainwater harvesting in every household. If they propose that, if they demand that from the project proponent will definitely has to implement. Even if they propose, okay, we'll go for the every household and implement only 50% of household, then also it will be a major benefit for the population in living at area and the water level, groundwater resource in that area. So these are all practical examples which I am giving, which we have already witnessed. Okay, In some areas, for example, there was a cycle valley project where major cycle industry, which was decentralized and located haphazardly in a town and city, they were then relocated at a particular location where common effluent treatment plant was provided, where all environment mitigation measures were ensured. So when we started development of that project, we took a public hearing, and in public hearing, people demanded that their children should be employed under that project. There should be an institute for training of the youth in the villages around that project area, and that youth will then be utilized in the project itself. So they ensured labor for their local population. They ensured employment of youth in their villages through this proposal and through this suggestion in public hearing. So we get many times good suggestions, and project proponent has no loss in implementing those suggestions and incorporating those recommendations in its project design and project report. Okay, but it will in long term definitely help participation of the public part and participatory development of the project. So idea is to that the project should be more successful and bring good results when it is in tune with the local needs and goals of the people. So if you are designing a project right from the inception stage, to ensure, if I am designing the project and if I ensure, okay, in public hearing, people have demanded this, I should establish a training center in under this project. So later on, people are not going to revolt. They will be supporting that project. They will and the project will also be getting trained local population that will again help them in growth of that project, in helping achieving the targets of the project. Okay, so it is a win-win situation whenever we go for participatory development of a project. So again, there is a case study of Irula community. There is a village of MGR Nagar in Velar and Kolarun rivers on the Tamil Nadu coast. And the project was to conserve and manage the Pichavaram mangrove forest. Okay, so the coastal wetlands which were there, and the mangrove conservation and management project was introduced by the NGO, the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. And the main aim of this project was to carry out sustainable use and management of the mangroves wetland remaining on this coast. So there was already a threat to mangrove wetlands in this forest, and this project ensured sustainable use and management of those remaining mangrove wetlands. So there are no general rules for natural resource management, and there is a in each situation there are local challenges and there are local opportunities that are available for any project proponent. So you have to ensure participatory involvement with the project site, people inhabiting that project site, to ensure long-term sustainability, and benefits to the local population are given in a long-term situation, so that that project can ensure sustainability and development in a longer term. So in Irula also, in this Irulagi, the Dravidian ethnic group, they are basically hunters and food gathering community. And they also fished forage in the mangroves for fish, shrimp and crabs. And they were employed by rich farmers to harvest coconut and make mats. And but they were soon enticed by the big landowners in the area, so that they can get into debts which could never end, and they will keep on using their labor, the local population as labor for their projects. Okay, so that basically local landowners used to enslave the people who were marginalized and who were not having enough financial stability. So even the mats they made had to be handed over to the owners of the coconut trees, because they were sold them to own the profit. So like all foraging communities, the Irulas also operated on the basis of social capital and internal social relationships, but they were heavily indebted to the landowners. But when this project came, it improved the life of Irulas, and the structure of the group was that in the general body, all families were represented by one male and female members. So firstly, they got a recognition for the scheduled tribe from that state, and all the scheduled tribe benefits which are entitled for them were provided to them. The awareness was given, because most of the people not even know that there is some kind of benefit that is being provided by the government to their tribe, because not they are not having that much level of awareness and education to go through these policy measures and to get to know that there is some kind of safeguard to ensure their interest. Okay, so so all the Irulas were illiterate, and they were provided boats to net and nets for fishing, and no, now they are fishing by groping in the mud with their hand. So to upgrade this, to upgrade the mangroves, they were informed about the various means how they can take all the cultivation and all the uh, product which they have to take from those mangroves, like fish or the crabs or the local aquatic food which they were extracting from the mangroves in a sustainable manner, not in an unsustainable manner. So their social interests were safeguarded, and they were given they were trained in techniques and strategies to exploit the local resources in a manner which does not hampers their productivity in a longer term. So at the outset, the first three concerns were addressed. The community certificate was gained, their Irula tribal identity was legitimized, a school building was constructed so that their children can get education, and then men were trained by using traditional fishing community. Okay. So all these measures which were introduced in the project through participatory development helped in restoring 17 hectares of degraded mangroves and 60 hectares of mangrove wetland under this project. So it was a major benefit for the whole mangrove ecosystem in that project site. And they were now legitimately exploiting minor sustainable resources from the forest with a developed sense of ownership and protectiveness for these resources, rather than just with an attitude of exploiting these resources. Okay. So these are few references which I have referred through the different kind of materials, pictures, images, flowcharts, and research paper references. So we should all strive to build a society where environment doesn't need any protection. So if environment needs any protection, that means we are causing exploitation, we are causing harm to that environment. That's why it is.
Can you please go back to your last one slide, ma'am?
Yes.
Just no. The reference slide.
Okay.
I'm reference slide.
Yeah, just hold on.
The session is open for discussion.
So anybody has any query or any